A 25-year-old girl with a fresh business degree called me a glorified mechanic in front of my entire team. Then she put it in writing. 48 hours later, her father fired her in front of the board to save the company from going down with her. She handed me the rope. I just held it. She ordered me to let a critical system fail for 14 days while her shiny new portal processed the fix. So I did exactly that. I turned off my phone, went home, and let her own rule turn $2 million of medical inventory into a puddle of melted plastic. I never broke a single rule. That was the whole point. I have spent 20 years in technical project coordination and site management. No degree on my wall worth framing, just 2 decades of keeping things alive that other people only notice when they die. Right now I run the cooling infrastructure for a large logistics facility that stores temperature-sensitive medical supplies. Vaccines, biologics, the kind of stock that turns to garbage the second it gets warm. We run off an independent solar grid with heavy-duty battery storage and a bank of high-capacity inverters feeding a network of 3-horsepower air conditioning units. If you do not know what that means, here is all you need to know. Sun charges the batteries feed the inverters run the AC keeps the medicine alive. Break any link in that chain and the whole facility cooks. I know that system the way you know your own kitchen in the dark. I know which inverter hums wrong before it fails. I know the exact battery that sags first on a hot afternoon. I built half the redundancy in that room with my own hands and a budget nobody wanted to approve. For 19 of my 20 years, that quiet competence was enough. Then it stopped being enough. 2 months ago, the CEO handed the regional director chair to his 25-year-old daughter, Victoria. Fresh business degree, ink barely dry. 0 engineering experience. An ego you could see from the parking lot. She walked the floor on her first day like she was inspecting livestock. She looked at men who had forgotten more about thermal load than she would ever learn, and she saw uneducated laborers. She made that clear without saying a word. The word came later. Her first official act was the one that mattered. She froze all emergency maintenance. Every purchase, no matter how critical, now had to crawl through her new procurement portal. Approval time, 14 days. No override. No exception. She announced it in a company-wide email with 3 exclamation marks and called it operational discipline. I read that email twice. Then I printed it and put it in a folder. Old habit. I keep everything. The first month under Victoria was a slow education in being made small. She rerouted decisions she did not understand through herself, then blamed us when they slowed down. She cut my standing order for spare fuses because the line item looked excessive, even after I explained that a blown fuse on a Friday with no spare meant a dead facility by Sunday. She nodded the way people nod when they have already stopped listening. In a staff meeting she described the technical team as a cost center we inherited. She said it with a smile, like it was clever. My junior engineers looked at the floor. I looked at her. Every week she trimmed something that kept us safe and called it savings. Every week I logged it. Not out of some master plan. I just knew, the way you know weather, that this was building towards something, and that when it broke, she would need someone to blame. I was not going to be standing there without a paper trail. I tried, genuinely, to make her understand. I asked for 10 minutes to walk her through the cooling chain and what 14 days of downtime would actually cost. She told me she did not need a mechanic to explain her own facility to her. That was the first time she used the word. I let it go. Once. The heat kept climbing through the month. The grid worked harder. The oldest inverter started running hot, the way it always did in a bad summer. I flagged it in writing. The flag sat in her portal, unread, marked low priority by an assistant who had never set foot in the battery room. It broke on a Friday afternoon, in the middle of the worst heat wave of the year. The primary solar inverter for the backup battery array started throwing critical failure codes. Not warnings. Critical. I have seen that exact code 3 times in 20 years, and all 3 times the unit was hours from frying itself. When that inverter goes, the battery array drops offline. When the array drops, the 3-horsepower AC units lose their backup feed. And in that heat, with no cooling, the warehouse becomes an oven inside of a day. I did not panic. I worked the problem. I called around and found a local supplier holding the exact replacement inverter in stock. $4,000. In hand. I could have it installed before midnight and nobody outside that room would ever know how close we came. So I did what 20 years told me to do. I bypassed the 14-day portal and filed an emergency override, with the failure codes attached and a 1-line note. Active critical failure. Inventory at risk. Replacing tonight. Victoria did not reject it from her office like a normal person. She came down to the floor. She crossed the entire engineering bay, heels loud on the concrete, and stopped in front of me while 15 of my people watched. Then she started screaming. You have been here 20 years and you still cannot follow one basic corporate instruction. Her face went red and stayed red. I do not care how long you have worked for my father. You are nothing but a glorified mechanic. I am the director. My rules are absolute. Do not touch that system, and do not bypass my authority ever again, or you are fired on the spot. The room went dead quiet. One of my youngest techs actually flinched. Something in me went very calm. Not angry. Calm. The kind of calm you feel when a long argument is finally, completely over. Whatever loyalty I had left for that company evaporated the second she said glorified mechanic in front of my own crew. I did not raise my voice. I did not defend myself. I looked her straight in the eye and said one thing. Understood. Please send me that exact directive in writing, so I have it for my records. She thought she had won. She practically marched back to her office to do it. 10 minutes later the email landed, and it was even better than I hoped. You are explicitly forbidden from purchasing the replacement part or touching the system until the 14-day approval is complete. Follow the strict rules. No exceptions. In writing. Timestamped. Signed by the director. Forbidding the only person who could save the facility from saving it. I printed it. I slid it into the folder next to her exclamation mark email and her budget cuts and my ignored failure flag. I powered down my station. I clocked out at exactly 5 p.m., the way the rules wanted. And I turned off my work phone. If the CEO's daughter wanted the system to run her way, who was I to argue with the director? I drove home. I had dinner with my family. I slept fine. That part surprised me a little. On Saturday at 2 p.m., the inverter I begged to replace caught fire. I was not there to see it, but I have rebuilt that room enough times to see it anyway. The failure code finally cashed out. The unit overheated, the casing went, and it took itself out in a burst of smoke. The battery storage did exactly what it is designed to do in a fault. It disconnected to protect itself. The AC units, suddenly with no backup feed and a heatwave, died one after another. And the warehouse, full of medicine that has to stay cold or it is worthless, started to climb. By the time anyone noticed, the internal temperature had spiked past 110 degrees and held there for hours. I walked in Monday morning behind half the staff. You could smell it from the loading dock. Hot plastic and spoiled cold chain stock, a smell that gets into your clothes. Every single pallet of temperature-sensitive inventory, the vaccines, the biologics, all of it, was a total loss. $2.1 million, gone over a weekend, for the one of a $4,000 part and one signature. My junior engineers looked sick. They knew. Every one of them had watched her forbid the fix on Friday. Nobody said a word to me. They did not have to. The CEO flew in that same morning. Victoria's father. With him came 2 members of the board, and the board does not fly anywhere for good news. They called an emergency meeting in the main boardroom and pulled me in. Victoria got there first, and she had already built her story. The second I walked in, she pointed at me and went into hysterics. He did this. He sabotaged the facility. He knew the system was failing and he maliciously did nothing. He let it burn to spite me. Half of that was even true. I had done nothing. The only thing she got wrong was the word sabotage. I had not lifted a finger against that system. I had simply obeyed her, perfectly, in writing. I stayed calm. I had been calm since Friday at 5 o'clock. May I put something on the screen? I said. I connected my tablet to the projector. I did not start with my emergency request, though I had it. I started with the security camera footage from the engineering floor. The whole room watched Victoria cross the bay, stop in front of me, and scream that I was a glorified mechanic who was forbidden to touch the system. The audio was clean. Every word. Then, before anyone could speak, I put her email up next to it. Timestamp Friday. Director's signature. You are explicitly forbidden from purchasing the replacement part or touching the system. No exceptions. Then the failure codes from Friday afternoon. Then my override request, the one she killed. I laid the whole chain out in order, the way I lay out a cooling system. Sun, battery, inverter, AC. Cause, order, consequence. The boardroom went completely silent. The CEO looked at the screen for a long time. Then he looked at the 2 board members, and I watched the math happen on their faces. $2 million in destroyed medical stock. A documented critical failure. A documented written order forbidding the repair. Signed by the director. If a single word of this reached a shareholder lawyer, the company was looking at a gross negligence claim with their own director's name on the smoking gun. There was only one way to cut that liability off at the source, and everyone in the room understood it at the same moment. To save the company, the CEO had to fire his own daughter. In front of the board. He did it quietly, which was somehow worse for her than shouting would have been. Security walked her out while she was still crying about sabotage that the footage had already disproven. I kept my job. I got an apology from the board that I will admit I enjoyed. The 14-day procurement portal was dead by the end of the week, and my emergency override authority came back stronger than before, in writing, signed by the CEO himself. A few of my techs asked me later how I stayed so calm through all of it. I told them the truth. I did not beat her, I just handed her a pen and let her sign.